Hello AP Psych students, back for another round of notes here. This section is a very light one, prejudice and discrimination. So you got this video, you've got another video that should be right beneath this one, and you're going to quiz over both of those. So you'll see that hopefully, and that makes sense. But let's talk about these terms. You've heard these terms before. You know what prejudice is, you know what discrimination, stereotype, all these things are, but we're going to explain some specific definitions for them, make sure we're on the same page, and then a little bit of the psychology of why we categorize people in this way. And so, first of all, prejudice means literally to prejudge. We look at somebody and based on usually outward characteristics, gender, race, ethnicity, maybe they're wearing clothes that indicates they're a part of a certain group, a school that they go to, or a team that they like, or something else. We see that and we automatically make assumptions about who they are because we assign them to that particular group. That's what prejudice is. And so it could be a positive thing. You could see somebody and think highly of them because of the group that they're in. Think that they're smart, think that they're hardworking, think that they are trustworthy, things like that. It could be negative. You could see somebody and think they must be dangerous, or they must be a criminal, or they must be stupid, or something like that, right? Because of the group they seem to be connected to. Okay, so that's what prejudice is. So stereotyping is similar. It's generalizing a group of people based on our pre-existing concept or image of that group and our experience with that group, okay? So basically it's a mental shortcut that our brain takes. Again, our brain takes in tons of information all the time. And so one of the ways it helps make sense of the world around us is to take these shortcuts and try to, again, categorize, okay, groups of people so that we can all of a sudden, in a very quick, short amount of time, make decisions about what we need to do with this person. Okay, so it's a shortcut that we take. For example, you might automatically assume that young men are going to be faster, maybe more dangerous or riskier drivers than older women. And most cases, you're probably right. Our brains kind of know based on experience or based on these things, we can categorize these things about these people. Now, where it becomes dangerous is when the stereotyping causes us to discriminate against others. So discrimination is different than stereotyping. Okay, so stereotyping is just simply looking at someone and saying, okay, based on what I think about that group, I think they're going to be like this. Now, when we discriminate, it's when we treat people differently, even we have no just cause or no basis for treating them differently. We don't know anything personal about them. We've just automatically assigned them to a group, and therefore we are going to treat them different. And there's no reason for it. Now, discrimination can be blatant. It could be you telling someone, this is who you are because of the group you belong to, or this is what I think about you, or I'm not going to serve you, or not going to whatever because of your group. Sometimes, and I'd say oftentimes, it's a lot more subtle. It's a lot more unconscious. We don't deliberately put people in these boxes and say, most of us probably would not call ourselves discriminatory, racist, sexist, homophobic or thing. We wouldn't call ourselves these things, but we naturally will treat people differently without even realizing it because of how we've assigned them to these groups. And so, again, it could involve giving preferential treatment to one group, okay, because we think they're like us or something like that, and so we're going to be nice to them, or we're going to be trusting of them, or less preferential treatment to another group. We're going to treat them as less because of the group that they are in. So types of prejudice, when we say types, really like what causes the prejudice, there's two broad categories here. Social divisions, okay? Now this first part is pretty easy for us to understand because we do this all the time. We create kind of these mental circles, okay, based on people that we identify with. So for example, I am a Christian, I'm a man, I am an LCA teacher, I'm an Asbury graduate, I'm a Cubs fan, okay, I'm an American, I'm a Kentuckian, things like this, right? So automatically these people I kind of identify as us, quote unquote. It's kind of like I'm with these people. If I see somebody with a Cubs shirt on, I automatically kind of identify with that person. And in fact, how often when you talk about the team, if I were to see another Cubs fan, I would say something like, hey, we won today. Or I think we're going to go out, and notice how I'm using the pronoun we. I'm including us, like, hey, you're in this group with me. Okay, or if I was talking about Christians, I might say we, and I'm talking about we as Christians, and I'm kind of identifying myself as being part of that group. That's my in-group, okay, is what we call it. It's an important word, in-group. Now, when I do this, I'm automatically also creating an out-group. In other words, there's going to be a group of people that don't meet these particular characteristics, and they become them, okay? It could be atheists, or Buddhists, or Muslims. We kind of think of them naturally as them because they're not like me, okay? Women, people that go to Lexington Catholic, or Dunbar, or Lafayette, right? They're kind of in the them category. People that went to UK, or Transy, or Georgetown, or something like that. White Sox fans, Cardinals fans, St. Louis Cardinals fans, those are them, okay? Obviously other, Chinese people, or Venezuelans, or people from Mexico, or whatever, become, all those groups that are outside of this mental circle that we've created become them. That's a very natural thing that we do, and what that creates is what's called in-group or out-group bias, okay? So in-group bias is when we naturally tend to favor or think highly of the people that are like us, okay? So if you automatically see somebody that identifies in the same category as you and you think good things about them, you are demonstrating in-group bias, okay? Now, historically, evolutionary psychologists would say that we created this in order to create and provide protection and social identity. So when you see a stranger, when you meet somebody brand new, automatically we need to decide, are they friend or are they foe? And by creating in-groups, by connecting with people based on certain common circumstances, we automatically tend to think of them as friend. People that are on the outside of those circumstances are going to be the foe. The problem, of course, is it can lead to prejudice, discrimination, even violence against the people that aren't like us, and that is the out-group bias. We are automatically suspicious of people who don't meet the qualifications or categories that we ourselves feel like we belong to, and that can cause some negative things, us to treat people in negative ways because they're not like us. Another part of this is talking about social structure, is what's called just world phenomenon. So most of us have this underlying belief that we've probably been taught by our parents and by our pastors and by teachers over the years that if you do good, good things will happen. You'll be rewarded. If you do bad, then bad things will happen. So we look at the world around us and we look at those people that succeed and we think they must have been good. They must have made good decisions. Therefore, they're being blessed. And the people that have suffered, well, they must be bad. Okay, and we kind of make this stereotype based on how we view those who are succeeding and those who are not. And so this can be particularly problematic when the rich have a tendency to see their own wealth as being justified. I've worked hard for this. I've made sacrifices. I've earned it. And they can look at poor people as saying, well, that's what they deserved. Okay, there was some character flaw or something wrong with them that caused them to not get ahead, and therefore that's why they're in the situation that they're in. And so that's called just world phenomenon. We assume that being good always leads to good outcomes, being bad always leads to bad outcomes. Of course, we know from the Bible that this is not always the case, right? Sometimes bad things happen to good people, and sometimes good things happen to bad people, okay? And so the Bible, there's many themes like that in the Bible that if we were in here we could discuss, but for now, let's move on to the cognitive reasons for prejudice and bias. Like I said before, again, it helps we understand the world we're coming from by naturally forming these categories. When we see things, it helps us to organize it by category. So we do that in the simplest, easiest way we can, which is what we see. Again, what do we see about people without even knowing them? We can see their gender, ethnicity, race, age, things like that. So we often automatically start separating people into groups based on those things that we see, and that's when we stereotype them, okay, like we said a moment ago. The other thing about this cognitively is we tend to notice in-group differences more than out-group differences. Now, easy example, Okay, how many white people do you know have said things like, all Chinese people look the same to me? And from their perspective, it's the same. Okay, they come here and they say, we all look the same. And the reason is that that's a cognitive function where we notice in-group differences a little bit more. We can distinguish features like facial features and whatnot for people that are similar to us as opposed to people that are in the out groups. Okay, now again, that leads to prejudice and discrimination because we would understand that people like us, for example, I'm a Cubs fan. Certainly there are Cubs fans that are good people, Cubs fans that are bad people, Cubs fans that are rich, Cubs fans that are poor, Cubs fans that are nice, Cubs fans that are jerks, and so forth. And I can differentiate that better. When I think of White Sox fans, I think they're all losers because I'm a Cubs fan. So naturally, I refuse to see the fact that they probably have the same differences that we do. And when a Cubs fan does something bad, what are we going to say? Well, we're not all like that, right? Or when a Christian does something that's heinous, you'd say, well, they're not real. That's not what all Christians are like. Or when an American does something bad, that's not what all Americans are like, right? So we have this tendency with our own group to demonstrate and notice differences a lot more than when we notice other groups. We simply tend to put them in that category and say they all must be like that. And again, that leads to prejudice and discrimination. So those are some of the main points, the definitions, things like that. Again, play the video beneath this. There'll be a couple questions on that. And that's our lesson on prejudice and discrimination. As always, miss you guys. Wish you were here for sure. Hopefully we're back sooner than later. But until then, again, text me, email me, whatever you need to do. If I can answer questions, I'll be happy to do it. Till next time.